the idea of this podcast is kind of like to reframe everything. As our God, we owe him absolute worship. As our King, we're citizens in his kingdom. He's our Father that instructs us in righteousness. He's our friend, as it says in Proverbs. There's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. There's major themes that start in Genesis. In the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth. The earth is formless and void. Darkness is upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moves over the waters, and God says, let there be light. What type of creation story is this?
So you're opening somebody else's mail.
42 rule, right?
Yeah.
It's written for you, but not to you. If you're reading a comic, you don't put it the same weight. If you're reading like a legal document, you're getting sued about something, right? So you have to understand them in their own context. And so we have to understand the text as an ancient Israelite would understand the text. Otherwise, we're practicing anachronism. And on the seventh day, that's the climax of the story, right? It's not the 6 days of creation, it's the 7 days of creation, in which this deity is now going to take up his rulership. That's what the rest meant at that time, because he's ordered the cosmos habitable for beings that he wants to have a relationship. They don't have a physics view of the universe, right? They have a theological view. What is this Garden of Eden thing, right? So what it ends up being is like the nexus point, the place where heavens meet the earth, where Yahweh, the God of Israel, is governing both domains. This is what's going to emerge like the divine order, right? So, and if you want to be on Yahweh's team, then you might want to uphold the order that he originally put there, which is why today you're seeing this blending of all of the orders. You're either found underneath Adam unto death, or you're found underneath Jesus Christ unto life. If in the end times you believe that there's going to be this one world government, this one world religion, this one world currency, and it's all going to be kind of controlled by this character known as the Antichrist. Just how is this system built? Is that this guy's not going to just get dropped in, right? And everybody all of a sudden just pay homage to him for no real reason. And so to detail how that system is actually set up, what that system would look like, what are the details that you should look for from two different perspectives, from the biblical perspective and from like the secular perspective. So in that we've separated it based on, that's why we separated the podcast, so we can follow a clear New World Order concept, not just going back to Cecil Rhodes and the Rhodes-Milner Group and the Rockefeller Consortium and all that.
Because that's surface level at this point, right?
It is, and I think people they're gonna start getting tired of hearing that same thing over again. Oh, it's thesis, antithesis.
And the further back we go, the more it answers the question like who and why and what to do type of thing, right? Because usually when you're new to all this thing, everything kind of hits, because you go from the level of, well, nobody would really do this, nobody is really that evil, and then you go like, okay, why would somebody do this? Why are people so evil, right?
And then the usual thing is it's about money, right? And so when you see that, no, money is money at this level becomes such a small piece, right? Because they would be the owners of money. They're just using money as a tool.
Exactly. What I like to say, they print money. Now what? Right? So if they literally can print your money, I mean, the whole American system was working, not to get civilian over here real quick, but imagine you print a paper and then you give it to another nation to get resources from them. That's the whole idea of like the petrodollar and all that stuff, right? That's a really good deal for America. I don't think that's such a good deal for anybody else.
For it to be the base currency.
Right? But
for a commodity that we won't control, right?
Exactly.
So, unless we, by warfare, go over there and by, the corporatocracy, we put our corporations over there who suck the oil from the ground, right? So, and so that's on the secular thing. So even in the secular strain, you can go all the way back to like ancient Sumer, ancient Ugarit, through the kings of Egypt, because what you're going to follow is this what's known as the divine right of kings. And so there's usually some secret occult knowledge that's passed down by either an anointed or an initiated priesthood, and then they determine the next set of rulers that the populace gets to elect. And we mentioned before that you may have an elected official, but you've never selected one. So these ideas they go way back, and so which gives both podcasts the ability to kind of like traverse the timeline and not get stuck in any one era. And so kind of like with what we're doing here. So I guess the overarching theme for God, King, Father, Friend is to tell like the complete biblical story, kind of like from end to end, and see that there is like this psychological war. And in this psychological war, again, there's two separate threads, right? And so we want to detail the biblical narrative for that psychological war, and it kind of goes back to, the God of Israel being the Most High God, who then divides the nations at the Tower of Babel. And he places the sons of God over those nations, and then the sons of God, they become hostile, and they become what later is going to be known as the gods of the nations. And so that's going to frame your entire Old Testament as Yahweh and his people versus the fallen sons of God and their people. And so going forward on the timeline, these are all the precursors for how you're going to get, the nations of the world they're not going to stay separate. What are they going to do? They're going to come back together. Mm-hmm. And so now
this is the whole idea of this, like you hear now unity and all that stuff. We have to get together. We have to do this and all that stuff.
United Nations.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, again, I don't want to go back to COVID, but we started hearing that a lot more since COVID started. We're all in this together, right? Yeah. Only together we can beat this and all that stuff, right?
You get, there's a lot of togetherness. There's a lot of solidarity. There's a lot of ecumenical movement stuff, and
So the separation becomes kind of like this new common evil, right? Where everybody has to come together and kind of to beat that, right?
Yes. And so to do that, you got to create a common enemy, and the virus was the common enemy to bring everybody together. And so this is classic, not to beat the dead horse, but classic thesis, antithesis, synthesis frameworks to bring about problem, reaction, solution scenarios. And so in a two-phase Fabianistic revolution, and so in Civilian, we're going to cover how revolutions were used to bring about certain eras in history, and so how revolutions are going to play an important role in the end. Like you would hear the Fourth Industrial Revolution, that's to bring about the end of the middle class, right? Because the first or the Industrial Revolution gave rise to the middle class. The Fourth Industrial Revolution will be the death knell to the middle class, bringing us back under the feudalistic system. And so when we ask the question, it's the New World Order, but whose New World Order is it? That's going to be the key component, and that's going to imagine like a ladder, or you have both legs of the ladder. You have the rungs in between. There's a lot of connectivity or a lot of connection points in between both of those narratives. Even if you trace them separately, you're going to end up getting to the same result.
Yeah. I mean, you said ladder, but the image that came to mind was like the DNA helix thing, right? So I don't know why that's the first thing popped in my head.
It's interesting that you would say that, because if we follow that type of idea, right? So that's Genesis 6:4, right? The sons of God and the daughters of men, they bore offspring unto them, which produced the great warriors of old, the men of renown known as the Nephilim, that were the giant clans, and the giant clans get wiped out partially in the flood, and then after the flood, they're killed under the conquest of Moses and Joshua, right, known as the conquest narratives. And so finally, the last one's kind of conquered by David, the second king of Israel, who kills Goliath, right? And so and then you get Goliath's brothers finally slain, and that's kind of like the end of the giant clans. And with that whole idea, when Matthew 24, where Jesus says, "As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be when the Son of Man returns."